And so it is. Welcome to JavaScript Refactoring. We are refactoring Ashley's Mod 3 project, the Great Indoors, Flora and Fauna. So we got the app up and running. Let's talk about how we refactor apps. Refactoring is same behavior, different implementation. Refactoring is same behavior. God, fucking motorcycles. Same behavior, different implementation. Same behavior, different implementation. That's what refactoring is. So to verify that we have the same behavior, it's very difficult to talk about refactoring without also talking about testing. Because without the tests, we're kind of just changing code. We don't actually know that we have the same behavior. So we're going to throw some tests on this. First, I kind of want to take a look at what we got going on. So here's Ashley's app.js file. Here's her index.js file. Okay, so we've got all these elements here calling this home function, which sets login status, toggles pages. And this is how Ashley's doing her SPA. She's toggling display none and display block on the one that she wants to show up. Totally valid way to do that. Got these, looking good. Looking good. Oh, this is perfect. Got all kinds of good stuff in here. All right. So, let's see, does the URL update? No. Cool. So I would start like this. There's a tool called Cypress. You may have seen me use it before. That we're going to use to throw up some tests for this. I'm going to go into that front end folder. And even though this is just a regular JavaScript front end, you can still install NPM stuff. Nothing's stopping you. So I can npm init. And that's going to make that package.json file. And then I can npm install Cypress. And then I can Cypress open, oops, npx Cypress open. And this is going to scaffold out a bunch of testing stuff for me. So I just made this folder structure for me. It's got all these fake tests in here. So I am going to delete some of those. So those are all these tests, so I can RM all of them. Ah. Oops, not what I want to do either. Ugh. How do I do that? Oh, it's RM all of them redirect, yes. Come on, man. I don't know why it's being such a butthole, but whatever. All right, so those are all gone. Now I'm going to make, right, I'll just call it app.spec.js. All right, so There's that app.spec.js file. It says I don't have any tests. I don't. So the first thing that I want to test is, does this page load?
What's that window on the side that you're checking that says you don't have any tests? What is that window? Are you?
This one?
Yeah.
What about,
What
oh,
is
it's the test runner.
Oh, so Cypress has like a whole window for test running?
Yep.
And that's not all testing software. Like I tried Mocha the other day, it didn't do that.
Very different thing from Mocha. Cypress is end-to-end testing. So Cypress tests your apps the way that a user would. It opens up a browser, it looks at stuff, it checks for things to exist in the DOM. Mocha's below that. Mocha is like, if I call this function with this argument, do I get this return value? This is, if I load this page, do I see the right things?
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it's called a, what's the difference in names between the two types of tests?
End-to-end test or integration test versus unit test.
End-to-end being Cypress?
Correct. Now, if you've played around with Mocha at all, though, syntax should be really similar because, spoiler alert, Cypress is actually just a mashup of a bunch of different testing tools, one of which is Mocha. So we can say smoke test. It should load. And then I can say something like sci.visit. And this is 3001. Cool. I do localhost 3001. Let's take a look at that test runner. Hey, look, it loaded. I got a green check mark. Cool. So now we want to check some of this behavior. So the first thing that I would want to check is, do the right pages show up when I click on those links? So I'm going to say describe page navigation. And perfect. And we got IDs on these. And this main. All right, beautiful, beautiful. So when I load this page, the home page should be visible. So I might write that test something like, it should initially load the home page. And so I can say sci.visit localhost 3001. And then I want to sci.get, and this is looking for some kind of query selector. I'm going to get ID is home-page. Home-page. And I'm going to say it should be visible. Cool. Green. Sometimes it's helpful to see that something fails first, because otherwise I might not be testing anything. So easy way to do that. If I try the opposite, does it go red? Cool, goes red. So we know we're actually testing something real. Cool, so then we want to check that we can click on stuff. So if I click on, oops, come on now, thing. If I click on Flora, then I want that other thing to show up. So that's plants is the ID. So I'm going to get the ID for plants, and I'm going to click on it. And when I do that, let's see what this is called. The Flora page should be visible. Say Flora page should be visible. I could even say like, as part of that, that the home page should not be visible. All right, let's see how that works. Oh, interesting. It's detached from the DOM. It did re-render asynchronously. Let's see. This is where testing gets kind of tricky. I'm gonna try. This. Node to be removed is a child of this node. What if I'm only doing that? What if I do that? Interesting. All right, I'm gonna try. After I click on that, what if I wait for a second? I'm kind of curious why all of that goes away. I see these up here. It should, I should change the name of the test too. It should navigate to the Flora page. Curious. So one of the things we can do is see what was happening in the DOM at each of these points. So it's there. Maybe, oh, you know what it might be? Because I have it open over here too. Huh, didn't fill it on the other one though. Let's try throwing a couple weights in here. Let's see, am I watching anywhere else? No. How strange. I'm going to try something. Instead of using light server over here, I'm going to use HTTP server. I've had some issues in the past with light servers live reloading and test runners. Change the port to 8080. Localhost 8080. Okay. Hey, there we go. I got green tests. See, the world of testing, it's kind of wacky. Now, let's see if I can take those weights out. There we go. All right, neat. So now I can make another one that's like, it can navigate to the garden page. And for that one, I know that's in the body. ID is garden, and the page that we want it to show is my garden page. So we're going to get garden, my garden page. All right, and we're green. So you notice how these are getting a little bit repetitive. Test frameworks will have this thing called before each takes in a function, and it's something that should happen every time. So I can move that navigation into there and take it out of each of these. And tests are still green. Beaut. Okay, and then there's a sign-in page. So that's login is the ID, login page is the ID. That's the same. Login. And it's a green test. Cool, then there's a create an account. Create account and create. Create, and then this was create account. Yep, create account. Cool. Let's check our test runner. Always green, always green. Cool, and then log out, last one. Ah, that's not a navigation. Good. Okay, so now that I have some confidence that these things work, now I can start playing with some of these things. So for example, one of the things that jumps out to me right away with this is I've got all these elements up top. It'd be kind of nice to have a better way to organize those. Anytime you just see one statement after another like this, that's a good moment to pause and go, do these things have anything to do with each other? Because if they have anything to do with each other, I should probably group them somehow. If they don't have anything to do with each other, then why are they all right next to each other? So, for example, got these buttons. Those like kind of belong together. And then these are all like the pages. Okay. So can I make something that's like buttons and then like a home? So let me just take all these. And then okay. And then if this container is called button, I probably don't need the word button on all of these. So maybe something like that. And then all right. Oop. Stay consistent on this kind of thing. All right, so now I've got like buttons.home, buttons.flora, buttons.mygarden. So now I want to look at where do these like get used? Okay, so that's a home button. Well, what if I made that buttons.home? Okay, flora button. So if this is buttons.flora. And I'm going to try to keep that next to, keep all these listeners together. And then this one is, let's see, my garden button. It's right there. Oops. Buttons dot, what is the garden? My garden. Cool. And then sign in div, not sign in div, the button. Sign in button. So that one's right there. Put that there. And this is buttons dot sign in, I think. Move all these up here. Cool. And then I need a create account. Cool. And then log out's a different thing. All right. So my hope is that after doing all this stuff, nothing's using these anymore. That one's not anywhere. That one's not anywhere. Cool. So those don't exist anywhere in the document. So I should be able to just delete them. But I have confidence that I didn't change the behavior of the app because the tests are all still green.
Question.
Yeah.
How do you know how far to take that with your testing? Like, you kind of did like a surface level, oh, let's see if these things pop up when we switch. I guess like I'm curious how you can figure out how deep you need to go into it. Like, are you 100% sure based off your testing that the functionality of the app is exactly the same, or rough idea?
Rough idea. So think of this less as a scientific proof of something and more like, all right, well, what would I be doing by hand that would make me feel like it worked?
Okay.
Just automate that.
And then I guess one of my following questions is, when you're dealing with something like test-driven development, would it be like someone who writes tests gets like the whole design for the website or the component or something like that, builds the tests, and then they actually start building their code from that?
That's not test-driven development. Test-driven development would be, I'm a developer and I go, cool, what's the thing that I'm trying to do? Well, I'm trying to make a button that when you click it, it takes you to this page or makes this thing show up. And so then you, the developer, would write that or this or something like that. You run it and it's red because that button doesn't exist, that page doesn't exist, none of that code exists. And so then you write the least amount of code that you can to make it true, to make it go green.
Okay.
That's test-driven development.
All right, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's something that the developer does rather than like a tester.
Okay.
Cool. So I don't think we're done refactoring that. I like that these buttons are all kind of live together. But remember how I just said that thing about like, well, when you see a statement and then a statement and then a statement and then a statement and then a statement, you wonder, huh, how can I group these things together? And if they don't belong together, well, then why are they right next to each other? So I want to think about how I could group this together. Easy way would be to just throw it in a function. Attach navigation event listeners. Okay, that helps a little bit. And then we can call it. Another thing that we could do, sort of feel like we should be able to iterate through that. Like, if I can take all of these steps and turn that into some kind of data structure and like look those things up, I can probably radically simplify the amount of logic that I have happening in this. And like, logic's the hard thing. Logic's the hard thing for your brain. Logic is the hard thing for your eyes, like when you're reading it. So like, good code in large part is taking logic and trying to figure out how to turn it into data. So for example, we're matching up buttons and pages here. So maybe I make something called like page mappings. And home should go to whatever that home function is. And Flora should go to the Flora page. And my garden should go to show garden. And sign in should go to login page. And the create account should go to new user page. Okay, so now I have these mappings. I'm mapping just from the word home, the word Flora, to this function home, this function Flora page, this function show garden. Now, I kind of feel like I should be able to iterate over each of those buttons, maybe using something like for button in buttons. And then do something like buttons at button to get whatever that event is. Add event listener. Click, take the event. And then we're trying to call page mappings.
You can iterate through a JavaScript object like that with, or something in something.
Yep.
That's convenient.
It is. That is convenient. So then I can look up button on page mappings and get that function and then call it. Pew! Let's see if this still works. Holy shit. Now that logic, I only have to do that once. Probably even one line that. And you guys know me, if we're just passing that directly into a function, leave it out, man. Takes a function definition. That's a function definition. So is it still green? Still green. I kind of wonder, these buttons get used anywhere else? I don't think they do. That would be, what was that?
They do not.
Cool. Let's throw them in this function then, so we can like make the scope as small as possible. Okay, so now consider what we've done. We've taken like, if we go back to the very beginning of this, so I end up with all these statements. That's like 14 statements and probably another 6 event listeners. That's like 20 statements in there. We've turned it into 3 statements, 2 of which are data structures. There's only 1 line of logic in this entire thing. That's a good refactoring. Ask me some questions.
Would you be able to, since you do have get element by ID over and over and over again, couldn't you factor that to make it smaller as well?
Oh, yes, you could. So what if we did something like, okay, so that gets used over here. So that looks up the element. That means instead we could do something like, let's see, I'm gonna do it in 2 statements first. Const element is document.query selector, and then I'll put the pound in there, and then let's see, and then buttons at button, and then have this be element at event listener. Okay, so I do that. I should be able to just make those be the strings. Like that. Okay, is it still green? You're beautiful. Okay, that's nice. So now we ask ourselves, does it make it easier to read to put these on 1 line? Like that. No, it does not. It makes it substantially harder to read. So we do that.
Is there a pattern to the functions that they call? Like the floral page, show garden?
No. And like we could refactor that further. For example, if they did all have a pattern, like home page, flora page, garden page, then we could probably refactor that even more. So that like you're calling a function that's named whatever this is with the word page at the end. You could do that. However, At that point, you are making a framework. And you gotta be real careful if that's what you actually want to be doing. That is a conventional approach. You're relying on every time that somebody makes one of these pages, it follows some convention. Yeah, maybe it does. Maybe that's fine. That's a heavy choice to make. Other questions so far?
I don't know if I fully understand what's going on lines.
Here, I'll give you the actual numbers.
I think it's 23, 4, and 5. Yeah.
Okay. So for button in buttons. This is how you iterate over an object in vanilla JavaScript. So for button in buttons, button is going to be home the first time, Flora the second time, my garden the third time, sign in the fourth time, etc. It's giving you each of the keys. You can look up the values also by doing something like buttons at button. That'll give you the value for each one. So for each loop to this, I can get the key and the value from buttons. What I'm doing is for each one of these, I'm looking up the element. I got this little pound in front of it because they're all IDs. I look up the value there. So the first time that's going to be document.querySelector, and the selector is # home. That's element. And then I add a click listener for it that gives me whatever function is at home, which is that one right there. Second time through. Button is Flora. Okay, so element is Flora on buttons. So this ends up being #plants. That's what element is. #plants. I add a click listener for page mappings, Flora page. Page mappings at Flora is Flora page.
Do you need to have that in tick marks? Couldn't you just index it? Because they're already strings. In line 24?
Not, and also add the hash in there.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, that makes sense.
Other questions? Another thing you can do, since this function only exists to like immediately get called, it's a pattern you can do.
What?
Oh, what?
Yeah.
The pattern is called IIFE. IIFE. Immediately invoked function expression. They used to be super duper common. You don't see them all that much anymore because all of the things you would use it for, that's like under the hood in React and Vue and all that kind of stuff. But were you making a vanilla SPA, as Ashley did? That IIFE pattern kind of comes in handy.
Can you really explain that? My internet cut out right when you started explaining it, and it's super mysterious to me.
It is. Immediately invoked function expression.
Oh, okay.
IIFE. So fun thing about this like exclamation point, it doesn't have to be an exclamation point. This needs to be any valid JavaScript character that isn't the letter F. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. Sometimes you'll see it as a tilde also. Still works though. So take a look at the thing that the other side of that, those two quotes right there. So effectively what I have there is, it's just some expression. That could be 1 plus 2, that could be whatever, it's just in parentheses. I decided to declare a function inside of that. And then the second parentheses, immediately invoke the expression. And then for kind of like goofy, bizarre reasons, you just have to start it with a legal JavaScript character that isn't the letter F.
So that wouldn't work without that character? What would it do if you put that character there? Is that the...
Nope, still worked. Shouldn't though.
Is there a reason why IFs are bad practice or anything like that? And why they
It's not bad practice. You just don't need to do them like very much anymore. Because how often are you handwriting a router if you're not a student in Mod 3?
Okay.
A lot of times you'll see these when you've compiled your code. Like if you have a React app and you run npm run build, you see weird shit like this in like the code that it outputs. Those are ifs. Cool. Onward. So I kind of want to do a similar pattern with these pages, but even before I do that, I'm seeing some inconsistency with the formatting. For example, that uses single quotes, that uses double quotes. Why? It shouldn't. So I've been hammering on you guys about linters. Here's how they work. We're going to npm install Es Lint. We're going to npx ESLint init. It's going to ask us some questions. We want to check syntax, find problems, and enforce code style. We are not using any module system. We're not using a framework. We're not using TypeScript. Code runs in the browser. Let's use a popular style guide. JavaScript's fine. Cool. Oops, I have one. Oh, I'm not in the right folder. That'll do that.
When you're using Vim, like you usually always install your linter per project?
Yes.
Interesting.
Because different projects have different style guides and stuff. Let's use Airbnb. Cool. Let's see. It might not be on yet. Hey, look. All kinds of issues there. Now, the good news is that with a lot of this stuff, if you just save it, it'll try to fix it for you. All right, that fixed lots. All right, what are you mad about now? Saw an expression, shit. Can I? See what rule that is. That rule was no unused expressions. So let's say no unused expressions, 0. Spell that right? Es Lint allow ifs. What about no unused expressions? I'm going to say do something other than error. You warn. Let's say, let's see if it'll let me do warn. Update it.
Do you have to put Es Lint in the beginning of the comment, or is that just the way that you're doing it?
Oh, that's exactly what you have to do. All right, there we go. What you mad about over here? Used before it was defined. So that's a function hoisting thing. I love function hoisting. I think it fucking rules. The rest of the internet, not as crazy about it. So then it just keeps bugging you until you move this stuff up. So that X is going to go away. And now I got these ones. So I go, all right, set login status. There it is. So it's going to want that to be above that. And that X goes away. Toggle pages. Okay. So I move that up here. Home div was used before it was defined. So then I got to move these up. All right. Active page. See, doesn't like that you're assigning a property to something that you're passing in. Fix that in a sec. What else? Flora page used before it was defined. So we move this up. Now it doesn't like, wants that to be below toggle pages. And like, this is kind of fussy, but if you consider that your, display all plants, if you consider that like, once you get all these X's to go away, you get them immediately when you make a mistake. It makes it a lot easier to fix. Okay, so this one, display single plant used before it was defined. Move that up here. And you just keep going until you've untangled all of this. Or we can also no use before define. Turn it off. Cool, what else? We'll take a look at this in a sec. The body of a foreign should be wrapped in an if statement to filter unwanted properties from the prototype. So this is so when you iterate through an object, you'll also iterate through all of the things from that object's prototypes. So the way we only do that is with, let's see, it's Es Lint. Guard foreign. We look up that rule. There we go, this thing. So if let's say buttons has own property, a better example of it. If has own property for an no. All right, let's do this. If buttons has own property button, then do these things. No restricted syntax. Let's see what that rule is. Es Lint. No restricted syntax. Oh, doesn't want you to use forends. Because we could, it'd probably be better if we pulled in something like each from Lodash, but I don't mind turning that rule off either.
Why is that?
Because the for in is a very imperative way to loop through something.
What do you mean by imperative?
We're telling it what to do. We're going, all right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your first key, and then I want you to pass that into this thing and get its value. And then I want you to take those things and put them over here. Versus if we use something like Lodash as each, we're just saying, iterate through this shit. I don't care how you do it. Use a while, use a for, not my business.
Interesting. What kind of errors would you run into with imperative logic as opposed to just like standard iterative logic?
So using imperative code is super hard to read compared to like the equivalent thing written declaratively. And also, you become very tied to one particular implementation.
Okay.
If I want to change the implementation, I don't necessarily want a different thing. If I wrote it declaratively, I just change how my declarative logic works. Write imperatively after we write the whole thing. no restricted syntax. 0. All right. Back to that for n. Ooh, didn't scope it. Cool. Cool. I don't care about that one either. No prototype built-ins. Cool. All right, that cleaned up. What else don't it like? No unused vars. So garden welcome, where do you get used? Literally nowhere. That means we can just do something like that. Okay, expected triple equals. Okay, that one goes away. Garden content is not defined. Okay, was that supposed to be this thing that we had before? Probably. So if we make that garden content instead, they'll go away. This is a great example of why you should use a linter. Take a look at that. It's a really subtle error. There we go. Here. She named it garden welcome and then tried to set the text of it to something very similar but not quite the same. How would you catch something like that? It's so difficult. Like, that's turning on hard mode for your brain, keeping track of all those little things. Let the linter do the work for you. It's a computer. It doesn't mind you slap it around and make it do all the boring shit. Ta-da! What's this not like? No console, that's fine. So I'll turn that rule off too. No console 0. Event is defined but never used. Makes sense? Get rid of it. All right, what's it still mad about? Still mad about that one, and it's mad about how long this line is. So let's make it not mad about how long this line is anymore. Okay. And then this is the last one. So it doesn't like that we reassigned a property the parameter active page. Trying to think of how else we could do this. If we're not reassigning that, I wonder, I don't think this will make a difference, but I'm kind of curious if it'll let me assign it. So we take that and assign it. Let's see. I just do dot style and then display block. Oops, still doesn't like something. Ooh, not mad about that. Okay. And are we still green? You're beautiful.
What's the difference between doing object.assign and also, or just active page dot style dot display equals.
Imperative versus declarative. I would like to mash these two objects together, please. I would like to go to this property and this property and this property and set it equal to this. A little bit different. The hot shit way to do that nowadays is, well, no, you couldn't clobber something that way. Yeah, you do it this way.
So the linter doesn't see the assignment, so then it likes that.
Yeah, it's not an assignment. It's a.
But it does the same thing. You're just not assigning it directly.
Exactly.
Is it like non-mutative kind of? Is that what's happening? Like you're not changing the same variable, you're making a new variable. It's the same.
It's still mutating, but it's doing it in a way safer way. It's doing it by clobbering.
What's the alternative to clobbering?
Assignment.
Interesting.
Is there any issues that would, like any issues that you could see from just assigning it directly?
Versus clobbering? Yeah, nothing I can think of off the top of my head. But whatever, it's not in the style guide. It's not what everybody else is doing.
Okay. Cool.
Check this out too. If I make a light mistake, like if I do something like that, and I save, fixes it. I hate writing single quotes. So I write them however I want. Make the computer do the hard work. Make it make all your quotes the same style.
It seems like when you install a linter on a per project basis instead of like having it as a plugin for your code editor, it seems like you can be more choosy about the like behavior of it. Is that part of why you do it that way? Or is that mainly just because it forces you to?
Well, I work on like dozens and dozens of projects. All of them have different style guides.
Okay.
I can't make them all use like my favorite one.
That makes sense.
And it's still in my editor. I still had to do all the like linting setup shit for my editor. It just looks to the project for whatever the style guide is. But all those like X's and warning signs in the gutter, like I had to install Vim plugins for that. The auto correction, I had to install plugins for that too. But what the actual rules are, those are in this Es Lint file. These are the rules. And then if like I wanted to globally override no console or something like that, then I can do something like that.
Cool.
Cool. What questions do you have?
When is a good time to decide, okay, time to like refactor my code? Like, how often do you do that in a project where like you take your focus off of getting shit done to let me make it?
Like every few minutes. It's not a thing you do at the end of the day. As soon as you get something working, immediately refactor your entire project before you move on.
But do you still have like moments where you've gone pretty deep in and you're like, I need to get this like idea fleshed out. So let me finish that idea. And then, I don't know, I see what you're saying. But then like whenever I go to do that in practice, sometimes I get caught up on like, let me figure out 10 bits of logic.
Yeah.
Do you have like times?
It takes discipline. You got to not do that. You have to make the choice actively as like, hang on, I'm doing 10 things instead of one. How can I make this one thing?
That makes sense. So it's just part of thin vertical slices.
Exactly.
it also seems like part of the reason why you can do that efficiently as you're working is because you have all that experience. And I guess part of that question ties into like being someone who's not experienced. Part of actually refactoring the code is learning how to refactor the code.
Yes.
Meaning that there's going to inherently be times where it's like, I have to revisit this to refactor it. I can't just do it as I'm going along because I don't have that intuition that you do.
Sure.
So then I guess what I'm curious is, I guess I'm just curious like when to put in that time. Like, but it sounds like, do you understand why maybe the distinction is a little different? I don't know.
So I do. Here's what you do. Git checkout branch. How does this work? Cool. So now I'm on a different branch. Do your like weird spaghetti code logic. Figure out how, for example, the page navigation would work. This thing that Ashley's doing where master, where we're like toggling pages and all that kind of stuff. How does toggling pages work? So we hop over to another branch, we play around with that, we get it working, it's fucking ugly, it has 10 pieces of logic, whatever. Now you get an idea of how that works. The thing that you have to have the discipline to do is go, cool. Now I'm going to throw all of that away and start over on the master branch or my feature branch or whatever and work one piece at a time. What you're inclined to do, like when you're new, is go, boo, 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 I got that working. I'm not touching shit. So like it takes some bravery. You have to go, cool, I got that working. I can get it working again. I can even refer back to like my other branch whenever I need to.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad I pressed you a little bit on that. I think that's a really good mindset.
But like refactoring is part of coding. You're just doing it as you go along. And like another thing that goes along with that is you end up writing something and then deleting it 10 minutes later. It happens all the time. Who gives a shit? If you're really attached to it, make a commit. You can always pull it back out of the commit down the road. It's one of the cool things about version control. But you have to not get attached to your code. The code doesn't matter. The hard part of programming, I mean, look at this shit. This entire app.js file is 239 lines long. If typing out the code were the hard part, it wouldn't have taken Ashley a week to do this. It would have taken like 10 minutes. You just type out 230 lines of code. It's no time at all. The hard part is up here. So you spend the time there getting that right. The code is disposable. Try it 13 different ways. See which one kind of works better. You just have to not get attached to it.
Sweet. Thank you. That helps a lot. In a professional environment, how often are you asking for like maybe someone else to look at your code?
Ideally, you're working with someone else. Like on an XP team, you're not allowed to write your own code. Everything's done in pairs. On non-XP teams, like every pull request, so that would be a thin vertical slice, would get code reviewed, ideally like within 24 hours or so. Could also be like anytime you do something you feel like might be weird or hard to read, you go, hey, Ashley, can you take a look at this? How do you feel about that? Can you tell me like at a glance what's happening in that function? He goes, not really. Like, God damn it. All right, thank you. And then you like go back and refactor it.
That makes a lot of sense.
What else? Cool. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Kyle.